Hello and welcome to our latest webinar, and thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you along and taking part in today's session. Let's go into today's webinar, and it's something a little bit different today, and it's something that I'm really proud to be able to present to you today. I'm joined by Alex Finn, who works within a section of the UK's Digital Public Contacts programme, specifically around our national capability to engage with children and young people using digital channels. Now, whilst this isn't a police digital service project or anything, it's something I'm very personally connected to, as I actually interviewed and recruited Alex to this role over 4 years ago now, as part of a national programme I led into the National Social Media Project. So this was about 4 years ago. We had a Home Office and National Police Chiefs Council funded project to establish a new approach to how we can engage with children and young people on digital channels, alongside the work we did around developing the social media target operating model, which is now well established in terms of professionalising our engagement and integrating digital contact into the national contact strategy and providing those commercial frameworks. And it's fair to say this was quite a radical and challenging approach to come up with, and it's based on extensive research with children and young people. And we established the Your Police team, as it's now called. So, Alex, I was wondering if you could perhaps take it from there and tell us all about it.
Okay, thanks, David. Yeah, let me just share my screen. Thanks for having us along today. As David said, I'm Alex Finn. I'm project lead for the NPCC National Digital Youth Engagement Project. If any of you out there already know about the project, this will be a bit of an update, but for those of you who don't, hopefully it'll be a fairly sort of brief but in-depth sort of introduction to what it is we do and how we do it. As David said, over 4 years ago, the NPCC was asking the question, is there a place for policing to engage digitally with young people via social media? They carried out initially a large survey, which actually pretty clearly demonstrated that young people would be interested in engaging with policing, but as long as they weren't going to be spied on or investigated on social media. So with that in mind, the National Digital Youth Engagement Project was developed to hopefully answer that question definitively. As David said, a small team of 3 were brought in from outside of policing with backgrounds in evaluation, social media management, and myself with a background in TV and digital production and youth-facing educational content production. And our initial sort of phase of work was to scope and build the project from scratch and work out exactly what it would be. So after some in-depth discovery work early on with hundreds of young people in schools across the country, which basically involved assessing what they thought of existing policing comms, what they were looking at in their own social media feeds, and effectively what it would take to stop them scrolling through those feeds. And based on that, we set up our strategy. And that, to be fair, for a lot of that involved just looking at them scrolling through in their classrooms until they stopped on something. And we sort of made a lot of notes and a lot of assessment of what it was that stopped that scroll. It's a fraction of a second we have got to stop them from scrolling and land on something. So the platform that we selected based on a lot of this research was Instagram. It ticked most of the boxes for us at the time, and it still frankly does. It was ubiquitous. It was pretty much everywhere, and most young people were on it. There were sort of some regional differences where Snapchat was the thing that one particular school everyone was on, but the vast majority, the big sort of bell curve in the middle, was Instagram. It retained content like Snapchat. If we put something out, Snapchat would just disappear. So we wanted to build an existing kind of library which we could then refer people to later on as they come to us with questions. And frankly, it's a friendlier environment than YouTube. We tried an early experiment with YouTube, which was pretty horrendous in terms of getting a bit of negative attention. So Instagram it was. Oh, and finally, obviously, Facebook. There are no children on Facebook. It's just their mums. So there was no way we were going on Facebook. This is obviously something we are continually reviewing and keeping an eye on the landscape for when we can grow the project and potentially expand to other platforms. But for the meantime, Instagram is the tool we're using. We basically don't have resources to spread too thinly across other platforms. We run this channel 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, so we wouldn't be able to deliver as effective and thorough an offering across multiple channels. I think, as Dave said, we do one thing, we do it well, we don't spread too thinly across a lot of other platforms and not quite deliver or build that audience, retain that sort of engagement. So we developed our content and engagement strategy based on a foundation of behavioural psychology, behaviour change communications, and contemporary youth communications research. And that sort of helps us develop our comm style and tone of voice. A brief summary of that would be no scare tactics. We know they don't work. It's like watching horror films. You might get a thrill from it, but it's hard to relate. It's a bit too abstract. So there's a ton of research to show that scare tactics don't actually work as deterrents. We never say don't do that. They are teenagers. Any parents of teenagers out there might have a sense of how that does or doesn't work. So we try to equip young people with the tools and knowledge to make decisions for themselves and credit them with the ability to do that. We also try to foresee the unforeseen consequences of some previous messaging styles, one of which I've been talking about recently, is the classic table full of knives seized during an OPSEPTA week. From policing's perspective and policing comms perspective, that's a good week of making the streets safer by removing knives from the streets and then telling the public about the good work they have done. From young people's perspective, and we have this on a lot of sort of evidence, anecdotal evidence, they see a table full of knives, which is pretty scary and makes them think that there are lots of knives out there. So therefore, maybe they should carry something to protect themselves. So that's definitely one sort of unforeseen consequence which has arisen in the past. And it's something which we try to anticipate with a lot of the messaging which we put out there. So 4 years on, let me try and just, there we go. So 4 years on from that initial sort of scoping and that asking of the question, is there a place for policing to engage with children and young people? The channel's consistently reached up to 1 million Instagram accounts per month. We've gained over 23,000 followers, although we don't use a follower count as a particularly as a metric which matters particularly. The reason for that is a lot of young people don't want to be seen to be publicly following a police account. But we do see a lot of these other engagements which we have. We see a lot more activity by people who aren't necessarily following us, but who are engaging with our content. That means we effectively have over 250,000 meaningful engagements with young people each month. And that's people who share something, who like something, who comment on something, who DM us, who actually do something to engage with that content. So we're still not taking into account the vast number that aren't engaging with us, but are perhaps reading that and are absorbing the content that we're putting out there. In the time since the project started, we've answered over 50,000 questions from young people on subjects ranging from the law on e-scooters to upskirting to hate crime, even down to what our favourite biscuits are, and everything in between. So in this time, the project has, in its limited scale, delivered benefits to national policing in terms of, as I said, the numbers of young people reached, the information which we've communicated to young people about law, policing, other youth issues, and a bit of behind the scenes kind of insight into policing, humanising policing. We've also gained insight from young people about their perceptions of policing and youth issues. Obviously, this is not just a one-way broadcasting channel. It is primarily an engagement channel. So I come from a content background, so I'm content biased. I'm constantly downsizing my estimation, but I think I'm now down to the content is 20% of our work. The rest of it happens in the comments section below, and it happens in the DMs and all this sort of feedback which we can get. Some of the other benefits are the support services such as Barnardo's, which we refer young people to. So a lot of young people get in touch with us and they need support, but they're not reporting something that's above the policing threshold. They're not reporting a crime, but they obviously need some support. So there's a real value in diverting them directly into other support services. I think something like it was something like 80% last time we counted of those were unknown to services previously. So we're hopefully diverting them away from later drawing on policing resources. So if we're talking about mental health situations, we can hopefully find them some help through institutions like Barnardo's, Childline or the Mix. And hopefully get them that support a bit earlier, a bit further upstream than further down the line when it takes up a lot of policing resources. And finally, it is an engagement channel. We are there to answer questions, give young people information, but with that, amount of interaction and engagement comes a certain amount of reporting of crime, either as victims or witnesses. Which leads me on to one of the initial major kind of risks which the project had. So currently, in conjunction with the Met's digital desk, we've developed a solution to this biggest problem which we had from the beginning, which was high risk of high harm contact with no geographical location, i.e. we don't know who or where people are who we're talking to on Instagram because they're anonymous or they use handles, avatars. So if someone reports something of, as I say, very high risk of harm to themselves or someone else, we potentially face the risk of not knowing who they were and who they are. We can now, we have a social media management platform, Sprinkler, and we have a workspace within the Met's DigiDesk workspace. So we can hand over any of those high risk contacts directly to the Met, who with their Operation Searchlight protocol can find out who potentially and where these people are, either allocate resources themselves or pass that directly to the relevant force. This has obviously then evolved to us thinking, well, if we can do this for high risk and high harm, all within Instagram, we should perhaps be able to then expand that to any young person who comes to us reporting any low-level crime, which would normally be a 101 or even a single online home, digitally reporting it. But as they've come to us on Instagram, we're currently building that service so that we can hand them seamlessly onto, for example, in the short term, Met DigiDesk, so they can continue that report without leaving that platform, without us giving them a link to click on and risk losing them further down the line, having that sort of drop-off issue. So moving on, going forward, we are looking to grow the project. We're currently at DPC, as Dave said, which means that we're funded for at least the next couple of years, possibly beyond. Oh, I seem to just noticed we have some formatting issues jumping from PC to Mac, so hopefully you can make out some of these things, but we've got a bit of a skew with presentation here. But since we landed at DPC, as I say, we're now funded by the Home Office grant agreement. So the first thing to make clear is we're for the first time in 4 years not looking for money. It's been a bit of a struggle funding a national project across 43 forces, and we've had a bunch of different solutions to that for the last 4 years, but we're currently in a stable position. The other thing I was going to make clear as well is that this isn't just an Instagram channel. Instagram is one tool that we're currently using to engage children and young people with policing. We do have other tools available to us. For instance, we do also have a diverse youth advisory group. We consult with them. That is digitally as well. We use a Facebook group and we have a Facebook Live event where we consult with them to guide the direction of the channel and our content. And ultimately going forward, we are looking to use them to provide feedback on their perceptions of policing in general and hopefully feed that back to various areas of policing as and when policing needs some insight from young people about how it's doing and what young people think it needs to be doing or what it's not doing well. Other tools we have are other potential social media platforms, as I sort of mentioned earlier, potentially to expand into in the future. We're hesitant to jump too soon. For example, TikTok. It's an obvious growing platform with young people, but there are many reasons where at the moment we're holding off. Firstly, it's just resourcing. We don't want to half do the job. It's a very hungry platform. It needs a piece of video. We put out a piece of content every day on Instagram. Some of them can be still. On TikTok, it's all got to be video, which takes a lot of resourcing to do properly and to feed an account so that you generate that following. And then obviously there's security concerns. So we are holding fire on that for the time being. I suspect to take some guidance from PDS and other areas as well about what policing's relationship with TikTok looks like in the future. So we also partner with neighbourhood policing teams who use our content, our digital content in the real world. So, forces, Safer Schools officers going into schools can take our content with them and it helps sort of supplement their real world work and then also has the benefit of sending more young people back to us. And finally, we have access to qualitative and quantitative data from our interactions with young people on the platform, all of which can help to inform policing about what children and young people are experiencing in their lives in real time. And one example of this is the current wave of young people who are contacting us experiencing sextortion online. The current example of that is teenage boys who are being catfished, tricked into sending nude images, and then within minutes of sending that image, receive a sort of standard scam blackmail email telling them that, you know, they've got their contacts and they want payment in Bitcoin. So we're getting a lot of people coming to us with this at the moment, which we can then refer them, first of all, give them the tips, calm them down, give them some information about the situation, about the fact this is quite common, and get them into help and make sure that they're safe. But secondly, we're gathering data on this kind of thing. This is a very current wave of and a rise and an increase in the amount of things that's happening here. So we're kind of on the front line of getting information in about that and getting some actual sort of quantitative data. So that in mind, we can also be responsive with our content strategy and then start to put out content which helps to give children and young people the information and the tools to keep themselves safe. So with this current wave of sextortion coming in, we are now going upstream. So first of all, a content piece about what to do if this happens to you, calm down, block the source, break off contact, etc. And then even further upstream, to let them know what to look out for in terms of catfishing and what the current scams are, and that this is not happening. This is happening to a lot of people. So hopefully we can get that information to them before they find themselves in that situation. If they do find themselves in that situation, we can then give them some remedying advice, but also then get them into help and care and other support services. So the next sort of phase of the project, well, as I've said, we're not looking for funding for the time being, but we are looking to build lasting and sustainable partnerships and relationships across policing, forces, disciplines, and other sort of related services. We can be a really effective and efficient delivery mechanism for the strategic policing objectives across several policing disciplines. And we really want to start a dialogue with any sort of other interested parties and potential stakeholders. We're looking for strategic governance as well. We're looking for input from across policing and digital policing to give us insight and guidance where it needed, and also to find out how we can help. We are a tool and a service there to be used by policing across many aspects. We need people to know we're here, and we need them to know that they can come to us if they have messaging they want to get out, or if they have information, data, opinion, whatever it is that they want to get back from young people, and insight into how policing is interacting with young people. So we are currently running workshops on content production for the channel for potential contributors. One of the things we want to do more of is get more faces on the channel from across the country, from different backgrounds, different accents, a range of diversity, so that young people see themselves reflected on the channel, and it really does go a long way to humanising policing. So we're running workshops to train officers and staff and anyone really who's involved with policing. It is, as I say, it's the majority of content that young people come into contact with about policing is either, if they even watch television, it's police chases, police knocking down doors, blue light chases. If it is anything else, then it's possibly American police shooting people on YouTube. So we are there to paint that bigger picture of policing in the UK, the hundreds, if not thousands, of different jobs and roles that go on, the people that are working in policing who are doing the job because they care about keeping their communities safe. So that's our first sort of call out, is anyone who's interested in or thinks that what they do might be interesting to young people, or have messaging to get out to young people. We definitely want to hear from you. The second thing we're doing is running showcase workshops for potential senior stakeholders to come and get a real-time, behind-the-scenes look at how we do what we do and how we help policing. We basically take you through in a whole day, some content generation, what goes into generating content with us, the thought, the time and the care, frankly, that goes into making a piece of content that firstly is going to grab their attention, and secondly, help them get some knowledge and information, as I say, some tools with which to make healthy decisions and choices in their lives. So after this, obviously, if there are any questions, I think we're going to take them through Dave and his team. But if you're interested in either of these or would like to have a chat about the project, do get in touch for more information. Again, I can see the PC to Mac formatting has knocked my email address off the bottom here, but hopefully Dave has got that to send out afterwards. But we'll, yeah, if there are any questions. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And it is really great to see how it has developed and has moved forward. And I'm just going to throw a bit of the feed from the actual page onto screen just for a few seconds so people can see the sort of content that is your team are putting out there, and it is phenomenal. And what's really important is the level of engagement that you're then achieving with this. I call it content-led engagement. You know, you pop content out there, it allows the opportunity for people to create. But let's go over to a couple of the questions and comments. And Gemma, if you could perhaps bring up the first one.
Yes, thanks, Dave. So the first question we've got is there a person we can go to in order to get a copy of the content from the Instagram channel so we can use it in school inputs? Really useful, particularly around the videos that you post. It'd be great to use.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things we're currently working on, is building a library of all of our content, which will be free to use for officers, staff, and anyone around the country who has an interest in whatever aspect. So comms teams can sort of repost it. Real life schools officers can take it into their schools. Basically, if you email me afterwards, we will, I mean, in the short term, we can give you anything you want, give you the original stuff or links to, obviously, to anything on the Instagram channel. But ultimately, we are taking the time to get this library right so that it's easy to find the stuff you want. So that means I think we've got around 800 pieces of separate original content, as I say, ranging from everything. I mean, this is a glimpse. This, if you scroll down on this on the Instagram grid, it just keeps going and going and going. It's basically 3 years worth. There's some recycling. One of the things we have to sort of remember is our audience is a conveyor belt. Every year there's a new load of younger ones coming on at the younger end, and it's social media, so it's supposed to be 13, but we know some of them are younger. And every year some of the older ones are going off the other end and going off into sort of more adult themed or more age appropriate stuff. So we do have to sort of cycle a lot of this content back around to make sure that we're not forgetting that the new ones come on, they need some online safety advice or some sharing sexting advice, something like that. So it's a constant cycle. But as I say, there are around 800 pieces of individual content about not quite everything yet. We haven't done all of policing yet. We haven't got to the end of it, but we're working our way through and sometimes going back round to sort of reinvigorate some of the earlier stuff. But yeah, do please get in touch, and we will help you out with anything that you need.
And Gemma, there's a question there about the hours that you actually work as a team. Perhaps you could explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, we run 7 days a week, so it's a small team at the moment. We are looking to expand. At the moment, we operate from 9 in the morning until 9 at night. Ideally, we'd like to go a bit later because we do have, in the mornings, we have to clear some of the comments that have come in overnight. And obviously, there's a potential risk there for young people. If someone needs to get in touch with us and that's the route they choose, it would be fantastic if we could cover that overnight. But still, I think at the moment, 12 hours a day for 7 days a week is pretty good. And we can see, obviously, our major interactions are when school finishes at 3 o'clock through to about sort of 8:30, 9-ish. That's the real sort of peak of in fact, there's a dip for tea time and then it kicks off again at sort of 8 to 9. As I say, we want to sort of expand that. And as we grow, hopefully now we're in DPC, we are looking, it's in part of our roadmap to grow the team so we have more sort of operator level people to push our opening hours a bit later in the night and cope with demand when it gets really high.
And if I can just come in about the target operating model for social media, if you do need any support, get in touch with us. We'll signpost you through to Patrick and the team. The operating model, we've got some forces who are the control room are the first people who triage for the non-children and young people accounts. But Gemma, I believe there's another new question just popped in.
Yes, so are you noticing a better interaction level between posts, reels and stories, etc.?
We are. I mean, with stories has dropped off a bit, actually. That's something we've noticed recently. I think we read something about an algorithm update. They used to really push stories and now it's all about reels. So whenever we can, we try to make it video. Even if we've just got some text to say and there's not a lot we can do with it, if it's a bit dry, we just at least make it motion text and something a bit more dynamic so that it can go out as a reel or a piece of video. And that just gets better organic reach. We also, one thing I want to mention is we also boost our posts. So as I say, our follower count isn't representative of the interaction we get, the engagement we get, and the audience we reach. But we do need to reach fresh audiences, and organic isn't usually enough. So we do boost posts, and that was just one other insight into what works in terms of ad spend was putting out a cold ad with no engagement already underneath it. Didn't get much engagement, but if we boost a post that already has a conversation and effectively a room full of people talking, people pile into that. It got much higher engagement. So that's pretty much the method we use now for expanding that sort of reach, is boosting existing posts with engagement already attached.
That's brilliant. Well, I think we've got through most of the questions, and we've popped your contact details in there as well as the link through to get through to us, and we'll pass on any details. But if I could just come in and just a reminder, next week's webinar we're going to be looking at cyber security standards as we keep moving that forward, and that we're going to be updating the website with more details of our events. But it is a timely reminder that we have got the Police Digital Summit, and this week we've launched our sponsorship packages. So if you are from the commercial side and you want to get involved in the Police Digital Summit, the sponsorship packages are now available. So if you want to get into there and start applying, we only got till the end of the month to get your applications in, so you can become part of the sponsorship arrangements. And obviously, if you're looking at visiting the summits this year, there's the website and the details on site, so you can register for information. We haven't quite got enough. We aren't opening registration for attendance yet. That's still a few weeks away. We have got one more question, Alice, if we can fit it in, about a question about Spock. So Gemma, do you want to bring that in?
Yeah, so it's do you have a Spock for the workshops, just working more closely together, please?
I mean, pretty much me. Yeah, if you want to get in touch about workshops, yeah, by all means get in touch. There's a, as I say, there's a range of sort of levels for contributors to the channel, and then potential stakeholders, people who have more of a strategic interest. Yeah, absolutely. Do follow up with an email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Alex. So we're getting to the close of the half hour. It goes very quickly every time we do this. The recordings will be available on the PDS website very, very soon. Obviously, last week's one is already there about our content and engagement map tracking, so please go and check that out. Subscribe to our channel. There's a little button that will pop up on the screen, and you can subscribe so you get the new updates as they come. So thanks, Alex, for joining us today. We're going to feature more and more content from more and more programs across the digital policing landscape as we progress. And a big thanks to Gemma and Esther, who've been busy pushing the buttons and making today happen. So thanks for joining us today.